Okay, it says I'm live. Let's see. I haven't done one of these in so long. I must forget how to do it. Where do we get the link for this? Let's see. Does it tell me how many people are in? We'll put the chat overlay up so we can see that. Usually it would tell me how many people are in, but hang on. Please hold. YouTube.com. You get to see me like experiment here live. Ridiculous. Yes, here we go. I can share the link. I can't tell. Usually it tells me how many people are in the room. Unless it's not actually live yet, I can't tell. Oh, there you go. One person in the room. Don't know who that is. But hang on. Let me just share this on my Instagram real quick. Here's a direct link. Bear with me, folks. If you're watching a replay, I promise the whole thing won't be me just looking at my phone. I'm just going to post a link to this live. Stick with me and then we'll kind of chill for a while. Did it let me do it? Yep. Friday Night Live. I'm just posting the link. Hang in there, guys. If you pop in and you can hear me, everything's working. Just show me in the chat, I guess. Put the chat overlay up so you guys can see that. All right. Posting the direct link to Instagram. There's 13 people live. Hello, hello. Penelope Crucify. Hello. I'm seeing names that I haven't seen in a long time. I have not done one of these in so long that I kind of almost forgot how to do one. So apologize for the weird opening, but yeah, I just wanted to grab the live link and put it on my Instagram. That's really the only place I've announced this. So I'm not expecting a ton of people here, but Viola is here fishing from scratch. That's a good name. Hello, Melanie. Hello, Heather in Connecticut. Hello, Christy from Washington State. Bessie is here. What up, Bessie? Sarah. I'm not expecting a big turnout tonight. I have nothing on my agenda. I am just going to chill and I'll hang out. I can hang out for maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour. We'll see. And I'm happy to answer some questions or talk about any particular topics you guys might want to talk about. Shakira is here. Hello, welcome. Hello, Marta from the Netherlands. Have loved reading all your books and content. Oh, that's so nice, Shakira. Thank you. Am I saying that right? Shakira, yes. I hope you find all that helpful. Thank you for supporting the work that I do, and hopefully it's been useful to you. So that's cool. Does anybody who's already in the room, there's 20 people or so. Hey, Daniel from Chicago. Hello, Danny. Welcome. I'm only streaming to YouTube, so it'll be a smaller audience. I'm not streaming to any place else right now. So it's just you guys. If anybody has any questions or anything they want to talk about, by all means, throw them out there. But okay, bye, says Bessie. Okay, take care. Good to see you. Bessie has been around for a long time. It's nice to see you. And take care. Bye, Bess. Thanks for stopping by. Sarah says, would love to hear about your schooling experience. Let's put that up in the chat. I'll put up what you guys say. I would love to hear about your schooling experience and how that went. Congrats, by the way. Thank you. I appreciate that, Sarah. I'll talk about that a little bit. Have I finished school? Hey, Terry, what's going on? Good to see you. Officially, I guess it's 11:59 p.m. on Sunday night, East Coast time. Officially, my last term ends, but really, I have one thing to upload, which is literally just uploading a document that I'm waiting my faculty advisor to give me. And tomorrow I have 4 client sessions and I will do my progress notes for those sessions and put in my timesheet entry. And then I am done, officially done. So I'll have nothing else to do. That will be the end of a 2.5 year. Let's see, March 2022 is when it started. So where are we? March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. Yeah, 2 years and 7 months, 2.5 years. So yeah, I am done as of Sunday. So the way that's going to work is, what is that, October 6th? And then I think November 1st is my official degree conferral date from the university. And then it takes a little time for paperwork. And yeah, so pretty awesome. I'll tell you, sometimes it seems like it took forever. And there were other times that it felt like it was just flying by. Right now, it kind of feels like it flew by. But there were times in the last 2.5 years when it feels like it was dragging. But yeah, it's been great. I'm going to talk about that. Oh, Christy says, I know the feeling. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm just so happy that it's over, to be honest with you. Not a whole lot's going to change. I have to practice now under supervision for 2 years before I can practice independently in the state of New York. So not a lot will change. I just won't have the school requirement. So it's just been a pain in the butt for the last 7 months. practicing every day under supervision, but also under the supervision of a faculty advisor and having to track every single minute and hour that I did because we have to jam a lot of clinical hours into a short amount of time to finish the program. So I'm really happy that I won't have to do that. I will have to get a certain number of client facing hours and indirect hours over the next 2 years, but it's not as compressed as it was for the last 7 months to finish the program. So thank you for all of the kind words. I appreciate that. Let's see. Terry is hanging out on the couch I used to be terrified of. I love it. I know the story of that. Terry, thank you for sharing. And I appreciate that you're sitting on this couch. I remember when you used to have to intentionally practice sitting and relaxing on the sofa because it would freak you out to be idle. So I love that you're chilling out. That's really cool. Shakira says, can you please talk a little bit about dealing with frustration when it comes to recovery? Yeah, let's put that up. This is really good. Shakira's question is a really good one. Like, can you and by the way, do I sound all right? I think I sound all right. If there's any issue, just let me know. Is the overlay up? Yes. You guys, can you see the chat? Yes, you can, right? Oh, there you go. All right. So I'll put the chat overlay up so you guys can see what's in the chat too. Although you're just in YouTube, so it should be okay. Can you please talk a little bit about dealing with frustration when it comes to recovery progress? And side note, will you ever consider practicing in other states? So I'll answer the second one first because it's the easy one. Practicing in other states is sticky. And I'll tell you why. If you're not in the US and you're watching this on the replay, I'm sorry to bore you for the next 30 seconds or 60 seconds because it won't apply to you. But in the US, every state in the union gets to decide their own rules for what qualifies as a licensed therapist, right? They have different titles. In New York, it's called LMHC, licensed mental health counselor. In other states, it's LPC, or I've seen LPMC, licensed professional mental health counselor. There's all kinds of different ways to do that, right? So every state gets to decide what their requirements are, which means for the longest time, every state, all 50 states were siloed. If you wanted to I'm in New York, I'm going to get licensed in New York. If I wanted to practice and see clients in Colorado, I'd have to apply directly for licensure in Colorado and go through that whole thing. There were certain reciprocal agreements between states, and I might have to do all of this stuff, but there was paperwork and you had to do that in every individual state. With telehealth, so much has changed. Even though I'm in New York, I could see a client in any state in the union over, a telehealth platform. So there's a thing called a counseling compact, which means that LPCs and LMHCs can cross state lines. That's just starting to get rolling now. I think there's 30 something states in it right now, but here's the rub. I don't know if New York is ever going to pass that legislation because we have very strange practice requirements here. We have this whole diagnostic thing that's going on in New York State. That means that since we have these weird requirements for a mental health counselor, an LMHC or an LPC to have diagnostic privilege, people from other states just wouldn't have that. They wouldn't. So we're not going to be able to do that reciprocal thing. The long and the short of it is, I don't know. I would love to practice in other states, but we'll have to see how that works out, either with New York joining the counseling compact, or I may just go ahead and get licensed in other states selectively. So we'll see. The first part of the question was dealing with frustration when it comes to recovery progress. And that is a thing. So I always say that one of the things we always have to acknowledge is the struggle, right? It's okay to acknowledge that this is really hard. So what we're doing is difficult. It involves intentionally going against sort of preservation instincts to intentionally trigger yourself and learn that you don't have to be so afraid of those feelings and work through them. So you guys know all the stuff if you're reading the books or listening to the podcasts and everything. We always have to acknowledge that that's going to be hard and you're going to feel the difficulty. So it's okay to express that sort of stuff. And some days are going to feel like I'm getting this. And some days you're going to feel like, why can't I get this? Or how come it felt easy 2 weeks ago? And now today it feels like I'm back at square one. Why is it so hard again? The frustration is going to be part of the process. You will get frustrated as part of this. And my best advice for that is expect it. Acknowledge and express the emotions that come with that frustration, because you don't have to just bottle them up or pretend that they don't exist. Just be careful that you don't go into retreat mode or start to listen to thoughts like, what if I never get better? Which is a common thought in our community. What if I never get better? And then people kind of put the brakes on and they stop and they freeze in the frustration. Don't freeze. When you're frustrated, express that, express all the emotion. If you're anger, if you're frustrated, if you're tired of this, if you need a break because you're just exhausted from doing the recovery work and you need to take a day or two off and reset, there's nothing wrong with that. So express the frustration any way that you can in a healthy way. Journal, talk to a friend, whatever, talk to a therapist, but just be careful that you don't just put the brakes on and stop dead because, oh, why is it so hard again? Because it will, depending on where you are, what's going on, what stage of a recovery process you're in, what's going on in your life at a particular time. Maybe it's you're ill, or maybe there's just more stressors in your life. It might feel hard where it didn't feel so hard a couple of weeks ago. That's just normal. So express the emotion, expect to feel frustrated, but don't freeze in your tracks as in the process. That's not a good way to go. If you got to scale it back a little bit, maybe repeat some old stuff that you had already mastered. That's okay to help keep your motivation up and get your confidence back. But yeah, it's going to happen. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't, but this is the way it goes. So good question. Let's go on to Viola, who says, I notice I've said it before, but thank you so much for helping my son. Oh yeah, you're very welcome. I'm not going to say too much, but you're very welcome. That was great. It was a great experience. So you're very welcome. He was great. Could you explain how anxiety can influence financial decisions? That's a good question. But oops, I forgot to turn off my screen blanking software. So let's put this one up. Good question, Marta. How can anxiety influence financial decisions? Well, I mean, anxiety, when we are like in that triggered state where we're kind of afraid of being afraid, right? We are afraid of our thoughts. We're afraid of the sensations in our bodies. We're afraid of what those means, what those things mean. We feel under threat. We don't feel safe. We feel insecure. We feel vulnerable. We feel uncertain. That's a lot for a human brain to manage. So principles of like cognitive loading will tell you that there's only so much we could track at one time. And decision making starts to suffer a little bit. That's 100% true. It's not just financial decision making, it's decision making in general. So a person who's in like a full blown panic attack or in the middle of a storm of like OCD related thoughts will find that they are having a hard time remembering words. Maybe they're not speaking well. Those type of sort of higher reasoning logic functions and higher functions do start to suffer. That's true. You're not debilitated. It's not permanent, but I would say that being in an anxious state all the time where your primary concern all the damn time during every waking moment is how you feel and how am I feeling now? Am I feeling better? Am I feeling worse? Am I anxious? Am I going to panic? Am I going to have thoughts? If that's what you're primarily worried about all the time or most of your waking time, then your decision making is probably going to suffer in all areas, not just finances. That's okay. It's to be expected. Just notice when like, oh, wait a minute, I'm in the habit of spending all of my time making all of my decisions based on how I feel, how I felt, and how I might feel. I'm going to have to back away from that a little bit, which feels risky, and I have to tend to other stuff. So it's normal for decision making to feel like it starts to suffer because you're just in survival mode or you feel like you have to be in survival mode. And there we start to learn like, oh no, wait, what if I back away from survival mode and I roll the dice and take my chances there? Can I pay attention to these other things? That's a valuable lesson in the recovery process. That those decision-making skills and the ease in which you make decisions will come back over time. Just that in the moment, it might suffer. Don't freak out. That doesn't mean that like, oh, I'm permanently damaged and I'm never gonna, never gonna be able to take care of myself again. That's not true at all. So good question. That's one that doesn't come up that much, but I think it's not just financial. It could be any decision. Anxious people sometimes have a hard time just like figuring out what the heck to eat for dinner. That's normal. That's to be expected. Good question. Christy can finally sit with her feelings. This is excellent. Take a lesson from Christy here, our friend Christy. This is one of the skills that I have learned over years of dealing with you guys and having the privilege of talking to so many anxious people. This is one of the skills that I think is critical because a lot of people feel like, well, do I have to literally just stop and sit? No, you don't have to literally stop and sit all the time. But if, like our friend Terry, who said that she's on the sofa that she used to be afraid to sit on, if you find that being idle, like sitting idle and being quiet for even a few minutes is a no go, no way, I'm not doing it because then I'll hear my anxious thoughts or I'll feel my sensations or I might have emotions. Take a lesson from Christy here. She had to learn how to do that. We're going to do that. Like the last episode of the podcast was, I don't remember episode, whatever. I'm looking at the page right now. That was episode 301 of The Anxious Truth. My podcast that I do alone was a guided exercise in mindfulness, which is really the skill you're going to use when you sit quietly and practice that. So you can check that out. I'm going to make the audio exercise from that available. And honestly, I think in the next few days, I'm also going to set up like a mindfulness skills cohort where we can get together with maybe 10 people at a time to actually learn that skill of sitting, like literally sitting idle and using mindfulness skills to get through those difficult feelings and allow them without resistance. We'll have some exercises we could do on those Zoom calls. We'll have probably a limit of 10 people per cohort. It'll meet for 4 or 5 or 6 weeks, whatever. You could practice offline between sessions. We could talk about it. We could do some coaching. That's a thing that somebody like me can do. I can do that. That's not therapy. That's just a particular skill that is useful in not only recovery, but life. So I'm probably going to do some of that. I'll announce that probably in the next few days or next week or so. But I know that that's a skill that's really hard for people to learn. Right. So, good job, Christy. I know you worked hard on that. Let's see. What is your experience? I'll put this up. Camilla, I hope I'm saying your name right. What is your experience with existential anxiety like? I relate to one of your old posts about being triggered by nature and sky. Would love your thoughts. Um, yeah, existential theme was huge for me. I'll share a little of my personal experience. Always remember when you're listening to somebody like me, a content creator or a helper online, I can share some of my personal experience. You'll notice that I don't do a lot of that. I can answer this question and tell you what my experience was. My experience cannot be a model. It can be a guide in terms of the principles that I use, but never listen to a content creator on the internet and just decide that, oh, the thing is, I just have to do what they do. Yeah, generally speaking, but there's so much nuance in that this is why I don't share my personal experience by default. So I don't mind talking about this stuff when you guys ask, but always remember, don't expect to be able to do exactly what the person on the screen or the scroll did. That's not right. And I would never tell you to do that. So my experience with existential anxiety was I could not hear the words death or dead or dying. I would get super triggered into a place where I would be, looping through and through and through and through, over and over and over for sometimes a week at a time, like frantically searching for answers to questions about existence and death and annihilation. And is there an afterlife? So that was really hard. And that's really common, right? And back in the day, I would say, but this is terrifying because I can't actually find an answer. And people will say, well, existential themes are special because there is no answer. Like people really do die. And the answer is correct. But what really winds up happening is, in my experience, the process was one of that fear going back to like its normal state, if you will. Right. So it wasn't that I found answers that made the idea of existence or like the nature of existence or death or any of those things somehow better. Like those questions still exist, but when I became less sensitized to everything and I learned that my thoughts were not emergencies, then those fears and those apprehensions went back to the same place that they're in every human being. Every human being asks those questions and is bothered by them sometimes more than others. But it wasn't about actually answering the questions. What I learned about existential anxiety themes was that I didn't have to ask them so urgently. So it wasn't about like, oh yeah, I found the answers and now I'm totally cool. I found the answer to death or existence. No, I learned that I was just so frantic and urgent in the way I was asking those questions, and that's no longer required. In fact, sometimes for me, those are fun topics. I actually really enjoy reading philosophy, and sometimes I'm not really a theological guy. I'm not that spiritual, but I love having those discussions now. It's still disturbing. Nobody wants to not exist, but it was about learning that the urgency and frantic nature of my inquiry into those themes was not helpful. It was not needed. It was purposeless. There was nothing I could do about it. So I had to drop the urgency. I hope that makes some sort of sense. Um, let's see. Let's keep going. Wow, there's a lot of people here. I didn't expect that. Almost 50 of you guys here. I enjoyed the Disorders episode today. You and Josh are hoot. Oh, cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Today on Disordered, that's at disordered.fm. If you don't know that podcast, all the stuff that I do at The Anxious Truth is at theanxioustruth.com. And the podcast I do with Josh Fletcher, which is called Disordered, that's at disordered.fm. What was today's episode? Today was the dating episode, dating with an anxiety disorder, which when we had a really good question, voicemail from one of the listeners, and Josh was like, hey, let's do it as a topic. And I'm like, people want to hear me talk about dating, but I think it turned out pretty good. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. Let's see. Hello, Diana. Let's check out this question. How do you practice overcoming irrational thoughts? I understand not avoiding place to travel, but if irrational thoughts trigger panic, is it the same? Lean into the warrior thought. Yes. Excellent question, Diana. In a nutshell, it is about that. And people will often say, well, my problem is that I have scary thoughts. So I can't do like driving exposure because I just have scary thoughts. And the answer to that is irrational thoughts that trigger high anxiety, doubt, vulnerability, panic, even what you're learning to do is stop trying to control those thoughts, argue with them, logic through them, prove them wrong, gain absolute certainty with them. Bring them on. My brain is going to make those thoughts. It's okay. Like the existential question that I answered before, my brain still made those thoughts about death and dying and existence and what is the meaning of all this. Just that instead of latching on and digging into them or trying to prevent my brain from having those thoughts, I would let my brain have the thought and like, okay, there's that thought again. Thanks. But there's nothing I could do about it. I would still feel really nervous. I would still feel really afraid. I would feel super triggered. I'd have all the symptoms, but I had to learn to back away from the digging into the thought or the pushing it away. So, how do you overcome intrusive thoughts like thought based anxiety like that? So, the post that I did on Instagram a couple of days ago, I think, was about that welcoming. We welcome the thoughts because if you're working with a therapist and you're using any kind of acceptance and exposure based treatment, you're going to get to the point where you literally welcome the thoughts. And by welcoming, it would either be I'm intentionally going to have them, I'm going to write scripts, I'm going to recite them, I'm going to go at them, or when they happen organically, I'm going to not fight against them to push them away or instantly try to frantically prove that they are wrong. So hopefully that makes sense. Very nuanced, difficult to do because there are no steps for that. So it's just about working through that and like, oh, I have to gain an awareness that I'm in a triggered state and I'm latching onto the thoughts. I got to back away from that and practice it and practice it. It's a lot, but really good question. So fishing from scratch, which is such a great name. In the morning, I'm driving 6 hours to North Carolina to deliver aid to the flood victims. I'm terrified to do it, but my family needs me, so I'm going to do it anyway. Any advice on how to mentally prepare for this? Well, first of all, thank you for helping out. I appreciate that. I mean, people are hurting down that part of the country, so I appreciate you chipping in there for sure. Any advice for mentally preparing for that? The advice that I would give anybody who has any big challenge in front of them that's going to make them anxious is it's okay. It's actually okay to be anxious. So you're having what we would call anticipatory anxiety. The anticipatory anxiety is designed to try to protect you from a thing that you still think you might not be able to do. And so it's really normal to be anxious about a thing that you're apprehensive about. I don't totally trust that I could do this 6 hour drive to North Carolina. I think I could do it. I'm ready to do it, ready to try do it. I think I got all the tools. I know what to do if I get anxious, but I still have a lot of doubt about that. And so the anticipatory anxiety is normal. I'm nervous about doing this thing I haven't done in a long time. I still have some doubt about it, but I'm going to go do it anyway. And that helps me learn that I don't have to doubt anymore. It's okay to have anticipatory anxiety. You don't have to solve that either. I mean, there's no mental preparation. Yeah, I'm doing a thing tomorrow that's going to be pretty hard for me, or I think it might be hard for me. Maybe it won't be. Don't know, but I'm afraid of that. I'm nervous about that. Okay, don't have to solve that. So I hope that helps. Let's see here. Chat GTA. That's a good one name too. I love that screen names. I dig it. Just want to say thanks to you, Josh, Kimberly, and your guests. Really helped me recover from a series of panic attacks to the extent that I now can't even induce one. Let me put this up on the screen because I think it'd be helpful for people to see that. I can't even induce one. Like that's a big deal. That tells me how far you've come, probably based on doing a lot of work that involved facing that fear and working through it. Right. So really good job. And it's interesting. The paradox is when you try really hard to not panic, you're much more likely to panic. When you literally want to panic, go ahead, try it. You can't do it, as you can see. Isn't that crazy how that works? You think that resisting it and controlling and trying to avoid it, like, no, I can't do that because I might panic. Okay, then go panic, because the more you learn that you can handle that, then it's not scary anymore. And then they tend to happen less and less and less. And you can't demand a panic attack. You can't do it. Interesting. Let's see here. Are you planning any new collabs? Asks Heather in Connecticut. I would like to. Now that school is ending, I'll probably have more time. So I'm looking forward to get back into some community based projects. Josh and I are going to do some stuff together, but he's not a new collab. He's an old collab. There's an Irish doctor named Harry Barry. Harry Barry. He's an author as well. Have you heard of him? I have not. I don't know who Harry Barry is, but I will look him up. We'll see. Let's see. It is possible, but not easy. Takes practice. Correct. Hello, Allison. Finally caught a live. I haven't done a live. I don't even know when the last time was I did a live. It's been a long time. Arit, hello. Very nice to see you again. Thank you for Kimberly Quillian, seeing and loving her. Can't ask for more than that. She's awesome. You know, I'm a big Kim fan. Kimberly, just in case anybody is interested, because you read that comment, Kimberly practices in Los Angeles in Southern California. If you just look up Kimberly Quinlan, if you're looking for an anxiety or OCD specialist, she has a big practice with like 10 or 12 therapists at this point. You could reach out to them. I would recommend anybody in Southern California talk to Kim Quinlan or Lauren Rosen. Those are my two favorites in Southern Cali. Let's see. Another question. What's the best way to deal with Craig the critic and to learn to love oneself? I find that anxiety is low, but Craig nevertheless prevents me from doing the things that I want to do in life. Wait, is he here?
It's Craig the critic.
He's here. I always have the buttons in front of me. This is a tough one because there's no easy answer to that. Like, how do you learn to love yourself? Well, I think that's really so nuanced. It's going to be different for everybody because whatever the reasons are that you bring into this equation that keep you from loving yourself or have that roadblock in front of you, whatever creates that constant looping critical voice kind of matters. That's going to play a part in this. Not everything in the world is an acceptance and exposure question. I mean, I might argue that most things in the world have some acceptance built into it, into the equation, right, for solving that problem or moving through that difficult circumstance. But you kind of got to know, where does that stuff come from? Why is it that you have this critical voice? We all have a critical voice to some extent, but if it's at the point where it's problematic, well, where does it come from? Then you start to do things like, well, I got to try and look at where that comes from. That could be part of the process. There might be a lot of introspection and thinking about the past. There might be just a little, there might be hardly any, but identifying sort of where it comes from is part of that process, I think. And then in the end, even if you do figure out where it came from or have an idea of where it came from, that's where the acceptance part comes in. So now I'm going to have to start to act as if I'm okay with myself. I can only learn to love myself, if that is the problem, by allowing myself to be me. Like if I immediately listen to the critical voice and clamp down and stop and retreat and isolate and don't do the things that are important to me, then I'm never going to learn it. So I'm going to have to allow myself to be me to the best of my ability. And however way that turns out, I'm going to have to be very kind and accepting of myself. That's what happens when we're kids. If we have good parents, that's how we learn that we are capable. That's how we get our self-worth. Our caregivers give us room and encourage us to explore and experiment and try things. And sometimes we fail miserably and flame out, and they pick us up and brush us off and tell us it's okay and we could try again. That's how we learn to love ourselves. That's how we learn, self-worth. That's how we build that self-image. That's a positive self-image. If you don't have that now, you're going to have to do that for yourself, or maybe the people in your life around you can help with that too. But that's a short answer to a super long question, right? But it's a really good question. And I hope that works out for you, dude. That's hard work, right? Let's see here. Face, accept, float, give it time. Claire Weeks. She did say that. Claire Weeks always has a place in my chat. There's nothing wrong with that. Those were principles that still to this day resonate and form the basis for a lot of the stuff that we do as mental health professionals, for sure. Let's see. Interesting though, Dr. Weeks, sometimes I wish she was still here, because I think if she had the benefit of like this kind of thing, I would love to see what she would have said in response to feedback. People will often say like, oh, her stuff is so dated. Well, I mean, she was writing in the 1950s, so give her a break. Of course it's dated. I would love to see what Dr. Weeks would say today. It'd be great. Here's another good question. Let's put this up. Let's see. What advice do you have for finding therapists that are well suited to help with anxiety recovery? I tried to, but they gave me coping approaches. Yeah. This is a problem, right? I'm not picking on any particular therapist. I believe that anybody that goes into that profession has good intentions and wants to help. I will give you a story. 2 weeks ago, I went through ERP training. It was 32 hours of training over 4 days. There's almost 300 therapists in the room. It's a virtual training, right? And the training was provided by some real big names and like real experts in the field that have been doing ERP for a very long, decades combined, right? Very well-versed, published people connected to very prestigious institutions. And they're talking about exposure and response prevention specifically for OCD. And there's 300 therapists in the room. I was amazed at the number of therapists. These are therapists. These are not just anybody, or I wasn't just anybody could join the training in the room that kept asking when the coping skills came in. When do we do tip skills? When do I get my client into a ventral vagal state? When do we start to do, when can I use grounding exercises? It was amazing because they were in an ERP training. They were trying to learn how to treat OCD and they were bringing into it this exact thing. That's not because they're bad therapists, but many times in the therapeutic community, a person's bent personal bias in a way, which enters in, that's okay. It's not a bad thing. And theoretical orientation tells them that they should never, their job is to help you feel good. Whereas people like me are in the business of helping you learn how to feel bad so that you can feel good. It was mind blowing to see the number of professionals in this training that could not get their brain around that. Like, but when do we cope? When are the cope? When do my client is in distress because I'm helping them do an exposure and they're highly triggered. They're experiencing a very high level of distress. That's when I do like box breathing, right? And the answer is no. The answer is no. We don't do that sort of stuff. So it's really hard to find people because I think it takes a certain personality type and temperament to do that kind of work because it is difficult to watch people in distress. You have to be really sure of the theory that you're working on and sure of your skills and know why you're doing it and work really hard with that person to make sure that they understand why we're doing it together. So the best way that I could think of would be look for therapists that belong to the IOCDF, which is the International OCD Federation, or the ADAA, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. I always say that wrong. ADAA. Another really great organization would be therapists that belong to the ACBS, which is the Association for Contextual Behavioral Sciences. Those are the ACT people, right? So it's really hard. If you go to like Psychology Today and you look for a therapist, every single therapist will say they treat anxiety. But in a room full of therapists with a tremendous amount of compassion, good intentions, and a good skill set, you will find that the anxiety specialist is the odd duck in the room because everybody is wanting to talk about how to teach the client how to regulate their nervous system or calm down. And I'm the guy in the room saying, no, that teaches them the wrong lesson. So it can be really hard. But look for those organizations. If somebody belongs to one of those three, there's a really good chance that they understand the kind of things that you hear me or Josh or Kim or Lauren say. So I hope that helps. It can be hard to find though. We are not a large population. I'm even doing a talk, honestly, in a couple of weeks at a conference for therapists, and it is about why exposure is okay to do with your clients. I'm literally giving a talk about that because most therapists have a hard time getting that. They're afraid they're going to traumatize their client, and it's really difficult. Good question. That was a lot of words. I hope I answered it okay. Road trips with Yogi, which is a great name also. I've been having issues driving lately. However, last weekend I drove 70 miles, stayed in a hotel by myself with no one to air quote save me. Good job. And drove back 70 miles at night. Pretty anxious, but I did it. That gets applause for sure. That would be like it did it anyway on an episode of Disordered. I love that. No one to save me is really important. Like I'll put it up so you guys can read it for a minute. If you're in the room or you're watching on a replay and you hear me say this and you see this comment below me right now, and it seems like, holy mackerel, like that seems impossible. I must have my safe people. You don't understand. My anxiety is so bad that I have to have a safe person. This is impossible. This is crazy. I would bet a large sum of money that this person, and thank you for sharing, started there too. So some of this involves, I have to at least consider the possibility that my insistence is wrong. Like I've been trying to hang on, resist, cope, be saved, manage triggers, manage symptoms, control thoughts. I've been trying that and it's not really working for me. So step number one is I have to at least consider the possibility that maybe I'm wrong about this and that I can actually get to the place that person got. That's the first thing. First thing is I got to at least consider that maybe my assertion about being worse, too severe, horrible, and too weak might be wrong. You got to consider that, right? Terry went off to go watch the Great British Bake Off. Cool. This is going to put up here little words of encouragement from another member of the community. I didn't believe it at first, but it is possible to recover. I watched Terry go through a lot of that. She was in my Instagram subscriber group when that group was active. So Terry's not here. She left to go watch the Bake Off, but I appreciate that she shared that. I want to put it up on the screen. A little bit of encouragement for anybody watching. That paper tiger, hello from Wales, dude. You're here from a long way away, and it's late over there. Quick question. What are your thoughts on recovered and recovery? Although I'm not agoraphobic, I prefer to tell myself I'm recovering rather than recovered. I find it easy to deal with setbacks or the so-called setbacks. That's fine. You can use that terminology. There's nothing wrong with that. I would say that if that helps you stay connected to the process, right? Some people will say, well, I have like 80% of my life back. 80%, 85% of the time, I'm living my daily life and I'm not really impacted anymore. I'm recovered. And then they stop. So sometimes using the word recovered, although this is just semantics and it's whatever word work for you, like everybody in the room and anybody watching on the replay, you get to pick the words that are right for you. But sometimes when we say I'm recovered, that would indicate I'm done. The process is over. If you want to say I'm recovering because you still feel that there are, impacts, negative impacts and obstacles you have to overcome, I think that's a great idea because it might keep you connected with the fact that like, oh yeah, this is a work in progress. It's not done yet. That's fine. People will sometimes say, is recovery ever done? And I kind of think it is. I think there are times when people get to a spot where they would say, yes, I am recovered. I am recovered from my anxiety disorder. Is improvement, growth, learning, changing, like getting closer to your values, is that ever done? No, that's never done. But the process of sort of getting past the disordered state, I believe that you can actually get to the point where you would say, I'm done. But if right now it's better to say I'm recovering, ain't nothing wrong with that, man. That's working for you. It's all good. What up, Les? How's it going? Let's see here. Hey, Alice, let's see what's going on with Alice. Still getting a little bit better every day. That's all we can ask for. A little bit better every day actually counts. We don't try and do recovery in big giant leaps forward because that gets super frustrating. Oh, hello, Houston. It's that Houston chick. Let's see. So good job, Alice. Keep going. A little bit at a time counts. Hey, Lane, what up? All sports considered. That's a good name too. You guys are so creative. I can actually say that I'm just popping in to say hi instead of coming in to curb my anxiousness. Long road, but I owe you and Josh for getting me to see the way. This is Lane was in my Instagram subscriber group. That group still exists for the legacy content because there's like a year of subscriber content. So I leave it up there because some of the subscribers want to still access it. So if you wanted to see that, you could subscribe for a month. I'm not trying to get you to do it, and you can go through the year of content if you want, then dump the subscription, but it's still there. Good job, Lane. Lane was really struggling too. And I saw that in the lives. We used to do Friday afternoon lives. So I got to interact with Lane, who's a really great guy. So I love these updates from you guys. Very good. Viola drove 15 out, 12 to the Outer Banks. Okay. I was terrified. I drove there even though I was anxious and I did it. These are so important. Like I did it even though I was anxious. I did it with anxiety. I did it with fear. I did it. I had a panic attack on the highway. I was far from home. These are important, right? Like those experiences are the experiences we want. One thing that I would say, generally speaking, because I think I'm reaching the end of the comments, which is fine. And I'll stay for another maybe 5 or 10 minutes. One of the things I think is really important if you're in the room now and there's about 60 of you guys, or if you're watching on a replay, always remember that when you're doing like, okay, I want to do this acceptance and exposure thing, and cool, because this is what I think is the most effective way to approach this particular problem, the anxiety disorder problem. Always remember that acceptance is a welcome mat for anxiety. It's not a shield and it's not a cure. So ultimately you're looking to change the way you relate to it and see it and conceptualize it over time. The cure isn't make it go away. So acceptance isn't I accept and now it stops. It's not that. Acceptance is not a cure or a shield. Acceptance is a welcome mat. Like, no, I need to be anxious to learn how to not be anxious so much. Exposures are not just doing things. I'm just, okay, I'm going to do things now. It's doing things with the intent of being triggered. Like there's all kinds of theory behind that we could go into one day, but you got to open that container. The best analogy I can give you is imagine you make a bowl of soup. You cook soup for dinner. And when you taste the soup, it's not good. Like you didn't do a good job. So like, okay, I got to season this before I eat it because it's horrible. Except when you made the soup and discovered that it wasn't so good, you slammed a lid on it. But now you still have to have dinner, but you slammed a lid on the soup because you hate the soup so much. With the lid on the soup, you cannot season it. You cannot make it any better. It's stuck the way it is. So exposures and acceptance are designed to take the lid off the crappy soup so that you could season it and make it better over time. That soup analogy seems to be working for some of my therapy clients, so I'll share it with you guys. But that's when you do acceptance and exposure, you are cracking open the fear because it has to be activated in order to like season the soup and fix it. In order to feed corrective information into that cognitive model, you got to do that. So please be careful about doing acceptance. Well, I'm accepting and doing exposures and I'm still anxious. Right. We do that to intentionally be anxious. Always don't forget that. Otherwise you can wind up in a loop where it's like, this isn't working, but that's important. I always like to throw that out there. Thank you for your answers in your podcast. They really click with me. Cool. And help me do it anyway. You're welcome, Marta. I think I'm around 60 to 70%. Excellent. And it's not really thanks to the podcast. I mean, we, guys like Josh and I and Kimberly and Lauren and all of that, the crowd that I hang out with, Joanna Hardis, we can give you the roadmap. We can give you the theory to rely on. We can give you the principles, but you guys are doing the hard work. So anybody that's down the road better than they were, you get the credit, not me. I didn't do anything. Brian Schnurr. Hey, Brian, how's it going? Thoughts on NOCD? I have thoughts on NOCD. They're not terribly positive. Listen, therapy is hard to find. So the principle behind you just pick up go on a website and talk to somebody with a headset who instantly connects you to a therapist who's, qualified or licensed or credentialed to practice where you are is a good idea. Making therapy, especially anxiety specialists that, people who specialize in anxiety disorders and OCD, making that accessible to people is really a great idea. We really, really, really need that. Like there is just simply not enough access to qualified mental health care. So the principle behind things like NOCD, I hear it's a big deal, but I want you to consider this. And NOCD, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Like I'm going to give you like real feedback based on a large audience that tells me what their experience is. Just because a company says, well, now we have, we specialize in treating OCD. That's really cool. If there was a huge population of OCD specialists out there that were still out there, but sitting idle with no clients because you can't find them, but they're out there, it makes more sense to do that. But they're just not out there. That's an issue. So the IOCDF is always like on a crusade to try to we want to educate more clinicians who can specialize in this stuff, who can understand it better. So the only thing that I have a little bit of an issue with, and it's not just NOCD, it's any one of those like sort of systematized or Uberized therapy companies is if the specialty was already out there and well represented in the marketplace, and cool, this is a platform that helps you find those people because otherwise they're sitting idle without clients, that would make sense. But it's really hard to find people who truly are OCD specialists. I'm sorry, there's just not that many of us. So we got to be careful in saying like, yeah, we have thousands and thousands of therapists. They do. I'm not saying they're not qualified or licensed, nothing illegal going on. There's nothing bad going on there, but you just, whether it's NOCD or anybody else, you got to query your therapist. What's your training? What's your specialization? How many cases of OCD have you treated? Are we going to do ERP? Maybe they're an ICBT therapist. Don't know. But, what are your affiliations? Do you belong to the IOCDF? Because that matters. I don't care who the headset sends you to the therapist. Always ask those questions. If you show up in my office, ask me those questions. You got to do it. So I hope that helps. But again, great idea. Great idea. Let's see. Does anybody feels like they're going to have a massive panic attack every time they get really angry or annoyed? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So this is a really common thing, Les. It's not just you. I promise. Like everything, one of the earliest episodes I ever did of The Anxious Truth way back in 2014. So 10 years ago was that everything is an anxiety trigger. In fact, you go on the YouTube channel here and search my channel for trigger. I think I did another one too, not too long ago about anxiety triggers. Everything becomes a trigger, especially any change in your internal state. So big emotions like anger or frustration or like being really angry or even being really happy or excited can boom, it triggers panic. It instantly morphs into that. Keep going. And that changes. The issue is Uh-oh, I have a big change of state right now. These emotions make a big change of state in me. And I don't like a change of state. I'm afraid of my body. So the better you get at that, the more it's like, oh yeah, I'm really angry right now. And I'm feeling that. I know what this is. That's okay. I can handle it. So yeah, really common, very common. Let's see here. It's been a minute. Hello, fearful flyer. I was in the depths of agoraphobia and you pulled yourself through. I didn't do that. Anyway, Cecil from Arkansas. Very good. Just started EMDR therapy with a psychologist, says Marilla. I hope that works out for you. EMDR has a lot of really good support, especially in trauma resolution. So I hope that works out for you. I'm glad you find somebody who can do that with you. Um, okay, let me throw this up real quick. Cecil is saying, Cecil, sorry, I'm probably saying your name wrong either way. I used to listen to you 24/7 to calm me down, total safety behavior. I love that you recognize this now. And I love that you shared that, right? I love that. Because sometimes people like me become safety behaviors. I used to walk around with Claire Weeks audio in my headphones back in the day. Oh, wait a minute, this isn't working out here. I can't do that. I was doing that to calm down. So if you find that the first thing you think you should do when you get anxious or you're having a difficult few days is I got to run back and listen to Disordered, or I got to run back and listen to The Anxious Truth or whatever, or the audiobooks, do you? Like if you're getting something from it, you're learning, it's reconnecting you to principles, it's getting you back on a path because you've forgotten some things or got a little lost. Cool. If you're just doing it because you think a podcast or an audiobook is supposed to calm you down, reconsider that. That's probably not a good use of it. Let's see here. That paper tiger. Thank you. I do still have symptoms. I don't let it stop me. Very good, man. I used to say thank you for your work when I first watched you. I could only walk down the end of my street. Yeah, a little bit at a time. You get there. Let's see here. Christy says, when I first listened to you and Josh, I never knew what exposure was. A lot of people don't know. Practice it on my own, hoping one day to help others as you do. Great. That'd be great. More helpers, more better. Now I go hiking, go to theme parks, eat at restaurants. Love it. Love it. Very good. I went from barely able to leave my house to motorbiking solo. Ooh, that sounds like a really cool trip, right? Uh, Rural Vietnam. Damn. Adventure. Love it. Please take the credit. I will not take the credit. Come on. Got a throw down. I'm joking with you. Thank you. Very kind words. Let's keep going. Garrett says, you mentioned ICBT. Is it evidence-based? Okay. I don't want to start a holy war here, but ICBT is really somewhat controversial in the OCD world. Here's you're going to ask I'm going to give you my opinion. And if you're an ICBT person, by all means, reach out and we can talk about this. Is it evidence-based? ERP has decades, mountains of evidence behind it. ICBT, not as much. We're waiting for more evidence to come in. I'm not saying it's crackpot. It's not a scam or anything like that. Where I think I'm seeing the feedback on ICBT that makes me at least kind of raise an eyebrow, not dismiss it, but say, okay, well, this is probably something we need to look at. And by the way, I'm going to do some ICBT training because I want to know the whole thing before I pass like real judgment. You got to keep an open mind, right? The biggest thing that I find is the non-exposure. It's a non-exposure therapy. And there's a lot of debate over that because unless this thing somehow magically changes your beliefs just by cognitive restructuring alone, then there's going to be some exposure there. Whether you call it exposure or not, you're still going to wind up with those obsessions popping up and wanting to like deal with them because you're in a triggered state. I know that ICBT people say no, that it fixes that. So that doesn't happen. But I'm just seeing a whole lot of people in my community and even in my own, in a brief time, 7 months seeing therapy clients. I have a few that did the ICBT thing and they didn't do it. They thought they were going into an exposure free situation where like somehow these modules that they go through, and it's good, it's not bad, but that alone was not enough. They still wind up in a situation where like, well, ICBT was lovely. It was easier because there was no exposure, but how do I know that I'm not going to hurt my kids? They're still asking the questions and they're still triggered. So I think it's great. I think there's a lot of promise there. I think it could be used in conjunction with ERP. The inference based stuff as part of the front end of that before the exposures is tremendous. I really love it for that. So I'm getting a little bit nerdy, but that's, if you ask my opinion, that's kind of where I am with that, but I am going to do some training. I'm not going to dismiss it. So let's see. Good question. Friday night controversy. Yeah, a little bit. Let's see here. I'm going to wrap it up take one or two more. Let's see here. Not sure if you had the same experience as Josh, but if you dealt with DPDR for a longer amount of time, how did you know when it fell away? I currently am unsure if it's even there or not. Well, the answer to that was it's a good question, right? It's a reasonable question is do you have to know? Right? Do you have to know? So that's probably the question of like, I need to know whether I'm depersonalized or not. Well, if you don't know whether you are or not, then does it actually matter? Like, is it impairing my function in some way? Is it stopping me from doing anything? How did I know when it fell away? I didn't know. Like, you can't see the moment when it falls away. You only know that it's gone. You don't know exactly when that happened. So that is a little bit meta. Like, I need to be sure that I'm not experiencing it. How's your function? That's ask yourself that whether or not you are or not. Well, I don't know. Let's see. Let's see here. Let's see here. Thank you for what you do. I postponed taking the exam to become an attorney, but since reading Alyssa, oh, that's really great, Shakira. I hope that works out. The bar exam, no joke, right? So good luck with that. Keep us posted. Do you know anything about her? Yes, I do. I have a fear of psychosis. It's eating my brain up. Okay. Um, you're good. This is the thing that you actually want to, I'm guessing, I can only guess, but I'm guessing based on a lot of people that I've had the privilege of interacting with over a long period of time. I'm guessing that you're asking me for specific information that says, oh no, that's not happening. Like you're probably asking specifically about that content. And I guess the answer that I would give you is how many times have you already been told, how many times have you asked this question? How many times have you already been told that you're okay? Thoughts about that are not the same as the actual thing. So I'm not going to answer the question with specific content because I have to assume you've already asked it over and over and over in other places, maybe to a therapist, maybe to doctors, maybe in other forums, and keep hearing the same things again and again and again. What I will tell you is that I keep forgetting to turn off this software. I will tell you this principle that we can rely on here is that thoughts about scary things, like if you fear psychosis and you have thoughts of psychosis, since the fear comes with that and it makes a big emotional response, i.e., fear, and then it makes a physical response to go with that, we can get fooled into actually confusing the thought of psychosis with psychosis. And then we start to look for it and we're looking for evidence for and against it. And is it really happening? Oh my God, I have to protect against this. So if I had the thought right now, like, oh no, what if the moon is crashing into the earth? Well, that's a thought. If I was really afraid of that and I got super triggered in front of you guys and I was on a near panic about that, would it help me to actually try to protect myself against the moon crashing into the earth? And the answer is no. You would know that I don't have to protect myself against that. But the big emotion that comes along with that thought, fear, and the physical response that comes with it, would fool me into taking action on that thought. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's a thing I'm working on. It's an analogy I call licking your thoughts. So if you draw a picture of an ice cream cone, right? If I said, hey, take out a pen and paper and draw an ice cream cone, and you draw an ice cream cone, good or bad, I don't know. And I would say, well, would you lick that? And you would say, no, I won't lick that. When I would say, well, why won't you lick that? It's an ice cream cone. You would say, no, it's just it's just a picture of an ice cream cone. Oh, so it's just a representation of an ice cream cone that you created in your head? Yeah, I'm not going to lick that. It's a piece of paper. It'd be awful. Would you lick an actual ice cream cone? Yeah, I would. But you wouldn't lick this. Nope, because I know it's not an actual ice cream cone. But if that ice cream cone picture that you drew came with a huge, giant emotional response called fear or uncertainty or vulnerability, and it made you panic and you were shaking and you were sweating and you were terrified, you might be fooled into licking that piece of paper. So like, don't lick notice when you're licking your thoughts and try not to do that. Back away. It's okay to put down the thought and not lick it. I hope that helps. I think I'm going to wrap it up, guys. I'm about out of time. What time is it? 9:30. This was actually fun. This was really great. Let me see if there's, okay. I'll take this one as the last one. This is the $1,000,000 question that everybody asks, but how? Like how? I get it. I have to be okay with being uncomfortable. I have to learn how to tolerate anxiety. I have to learn how to move through the uncomfortable sensations and thoughts and emotions and symptoms and all of those things. But how? What you're asking me is, I don't want to do that. It's incomprehensible to me that I might be uncomfortable or afraid and not fix it. So what I said earlier on in the live stream was the first step to how is you're going to have to at least consider the possibility that you're wrong about that. If you're gonna hang on like hot death to insisting that there has to be a fix, Whenever you feel afraid or uncomfortable or distressed, then you're going to get stuck on how. There really is no steps for how. There are concepts we can bring into that, mindful detachment and non-reactivity, or, that sort of stuff. There's stuff that like that. But in the end, those are only methods for getting right up close and personal with that uncomfortable feeling. They're not methods for calming it or getting away from it. So the how, if you were, say, working with me in therapy, the how would be, oh no, how do I put you face to face, like nose to nose with that thing that you hate so much? It's not like, how do you calm it down? So you're going to have to at least consider the possibility that saying it is impossible. If I am uncomfortable and distressed, I must take some action to fix it right now. Then there's going to be a mismatch. So yeah, Chelsea, I get it. It's not just you. I'm not picking on you. You asked a really good question because everybody starts by asking that question. So yeah, 100% got me. I get it. It's not your fault. Everybody starts in that place, right? Everybody starts there like, okay, this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about, but clearly I'm missing something, because is he really saying that I have to allow myself to be really uncomfortable and afraid? Yeah, he's really saying that. Remember, we're always operating in a context where it feels you are afraid, but also safe at the same time. You always have to remember that, right? Always, always, always. In this context that we're talking about, anxiety disorders, chronic and disordered states of anxiety, panic disorder, agoraphobia, OCD, health anxiety, we're always talking about the feeling of not being safe in a situation where you really are. That's super critical. We don't do this stuff in actual dangerous situations. That's not what people like me do. We operate from the assumption always that, like, no, 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 you can be really afraid and also safe at the same time. That's was the very first thing I think I ever posted on Instagram years ago. Anyway, guys, this was really cool. Like, you can come back and watch the replay if you want. I'll maybe do a little more of these. I hopefully will have more time to be able to interact in the community like this, because I haven't done it in a long, long time because of the end of the degree program. But I'll try and do more of these. Won't always be on Friday night. Just happen to be like off the cuff kind of thing. But I'm gonna go chill out. I'm gonna read. I'm gonna hang out with Copper, my dog, and just try and enjoy the rest of the night. I have work to do in the morning, and then I'll officially finish being a grad student tomorrow. So that should be fun. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. I'm sorry I couldn't get to every one of the questions, but I'm just running out of time. So, hey, Christine, good to see you. Thanks for popping in at the end on Saturday morning in Australia. So anyway, you guys can come back and watch the replay of this. It'll stay up on my channel for sure. And then I'll do more of these. Maybe I'll give you more than 10 minutes advance notice next time. But for those of you who hung out on a Friday night with me for an hour, so thank you.